For decades, Hollywood has been kowtowing to China's censors in order to gain access to the massively lucrative Chinese box office. This control has led to edits, script changes, and entire films being reworked or scrapped to appease the CCP. But before we begin, my name is Mr. Scape, and it would be greatly appreciated if you liked and subscribed. One of the most infamous examples of Hollywood bowing to Chinese pressure is the 2012 remake of the classic Cold War film Red Dawn. The original script featured a daring premise: Chinese military forces invading and occupying parts of the American homeland. It was meant to be an updated, ripped from the headlines take on the Soviet invasion storyline from the 1984 original. However, as production moved forward, the studio brass at Sony Pictures got cold feet about directly depicting China as the villainous aggressor force. They knew that overtly antagonizing such a crucial market could severely diminish Red Dawn's box office prospects in the all-important Chinese theater circuit. Outright banning was even a possibility given Beijing's extreme sensitivity to how they are portrayed on the big screen. So, in a cowardly bid to preserve those lucrative distribution deals, Sony decided to digitally erase the Chinese forces through expensive reshoots and CGI work. The invading military had to be re-edited, revoiced, reflagged, and rebranded as North Koreans instead. An estimated $1 million went into these extensive digital alterations. Just think about that for a second. A major Hollywood studio willingly spent millions to completely change the core premise and main adversary of their movie, or to avoid giving even fictionalized offense to China's oppressive government. The cast was blindsided, with actors like Chris Hemsworth publicly voicing their disappointment at having to portray something so creatively neutered. In the end, Red Dawn was still a commercial failure, making just $51 million total against an $800 million budget. All that backpedaling, all those compromises, all for a box office dud. But Sony's desperation to stay in Beijing's good graces trumped any creative or financial considerations. A shameful case of the overwhelming leverage China wields over the supposed free expression of Hollywood. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Ancient One character from Doctor Strange was changed from being a Tibetan man to a Celtic woman. Why? To avoid upsetting China over its illegal occupation of Tibet. Real creative decision there, guys. Speaking of superheroes, even the latest Top Gun sequel, Maverick's jacket conspicuously avoided showing any Taiwanese or Japanese flag patches. Can't risk offending that Chinese censorship board now, can we? If you think it's just action movies making these compromises, think again. In the romantic comedy Crazy Rich Asians set in Singapore, a key subplot involving a Chinese woman having an affair was cut over fears it promoted values inconsistent with the Chinese outlook. But the ultimate example of China's sway might be World War Z, the 2013 Brad Pitt zombie thriller. The film's original script featured an incredibly tense scene set in China, with characters criticizing the country's lockdown methods. But Paramount thoroughly reworked the entire sequence, shifting it to a generic somewhere in Asia to avoid any controversy. In the original script for World War Z, one of the most dramatic and pivotal scenes took place in Taiwan. As a ravenous zombie outbreak swept across China, the government took draconian measures to contain it, welding citizens inside buildings and brutally cracking down on any attempt to flee or rebel against the lockdowns. This led to an intense sequence depicting a family trapped in their apartment, watching in horror as military sniper guns down people trying to escape the quarantine zone. The dialogue had characters criticizing the Chinese Communist Party's cold authoritarianism in sacrificing lives for their own survival at any cost. Needless to say, once Paramount executives got wind of this critical portrayal, they swiftly moved to neuter it from the final film. Any remotely negative depictions of China's authoritarian policies were scrubbed. The location was shifted to be a nondescript anonymous village in Asia. All dialogue about the Chinese government's harsh tactics was removed entirely. The original intense drama and trenchant social commentary were thoroughly defanged into harmless set pieces devoid of any political substance. In its place were utterly generic scenes of Brad Pitt and his companions simply running away from more undead mobs. A potentially memorable, thought-provoking moment was ripped away to secure that lucrative Chinese distribution. How many other great stories or meaningful artistic visions have been similarly compromised or completely buried due to Hollywood's craven deference to China's censors? The list just keeps going on and on. Classics like Kung Fu Panda, Looper, Men in Black 3, Mission Impossible 3, and so many others all neutered to some degree for that all-important Chinese release. It's not just movies either. Musicians are barred or edited when their lyrics touch on unsavory topics like democracy or the Dalai Lama. Game companies like Activision have swapped out Taiwanese flags for Chinese ones to stay kosher. Disney actually thanked China's racist Xinjiang security forces in the credits of Mulan. Why do they do all this? Money, plain and simple. The Chinese box office was worth nearly $7 billion in 2019. Even a moderately successful release there can net tens of millions more. With profits like that on the line, studios are fully willing to engage in some light self-censorship to make Beijing happy. Now look, I'm not saying Hollywood has no backbone or integrity at all. Sometimes they do put their foot down, as with Christopher Nolan refusing to cut for China on movies like Dunkirk and Tenet. But even he had to bow down for 2008's The Dark Knight, swapping Hong Kong with a fictional spot. The saddest part is how many great films never even get made anymore for fear of displeasing China. Imagine an alternative universe where that biopic on the Dalai Lama or that gonzo story about Xi Jinping's rise to power actually went to production. Ultimately, it's an open secret in the industry that making a China-friendly film means ignoring some thorny geopolitical issues about Taiwan, Hong Kong, Tibet, Xinjiang, and many other human rights violations committed by the Chinese Communist Party. Sad but true. It's not just about editing out contested flags or avoiding entire topics either. The backdoor dealings and outright corruption between Hollywood and China run much deeper. You see, gaining access to that lucrative Chinese market often relies on cozying up to the right people and greasing the proper palms. Consider the example of the Huayi Brothers production company, which helped finance films like Transformers: Age of Extinction. Their chairman was caught in an extensive bribery scandal, funneling money to Chinese officials in exchange for having a monopoly on select imports like Iron Man 3. Similar pay-to-play schemes have plagued the release of other major blockbusters in China. There are dark whispers of briefcases stuffed with millions changing hands behind closed doors to get American movies on Chinese screens. Where there is that kind of money at stake, corruption is never far behind. And the tainted ties don't stop there. Hollywood studios have formed partnerships with shady Chinese tech giants like Huawei, Alibaba, and Tencent, all with direct links to the Chinese government's censorship and surveillance programs. Acting almost as Beijing's American proxies, these Chinese firms are involved in production, financing, and distribution deals for US movies. Their role injects even more leverage for China to censor, sanitize, and shape American cinematic output from the outset. It's a new era of subsidized art meeting dictated ideology on a global scale. Whether it's the editing room, the script stage, or the boardrooms where deals get made, Hollywood is alarmingly beholden to China. Every year, more concessions are made, more moral lines are crossed, all to keep raking in those yuan. The dream factory has turned into a factory of compromise to please its Beijing overlords. How much further will they go? What iconic character or plotline gets butchered next? Keep watching closely because nothing is off the table when big money is involved. So next time you're watching the latest blockbuster, look a little closer. Look for the subtle omissions, the missing details, the things unsaid or brushed aside. Because behind all that razzle-dazzle, China's creeping influence is very much there on the big screen. Thanks for watching. Tell me what you think about China's influence on Hollywood in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this.